Kia ora, this program is brought to you by Wellington Access Radio. Wellington Access Radio, make your voice heard.
Kia ora everyone, you're listening to Voice of Aroha on frequency 106.1 FM from Wellington, New Zealand. This show is sponsored by Host International New Zealand and is broadcasting on Wellington Access Radio. Joining me in the studio today are my co-hosts Beth, Caudrian and Michael. And we also have our special guests today, Wadad and Kadro. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad, yourself?
Not too bad. Just introduce yourselves for us really quickly.
So, kia ora everyone. My name is Wadad Balo. I am originally Syrian, but I was raised in New Zealand, been here 20 years. Recently graduated from Victoria University, majoring in psychology and sociology. Since then, I've also completed my life coaching training and currently looking for jobs.
Hi, I'm Kadra Mohammed. I also just graduated from uni, studied a biomedical science degree. I'm not born in New Zealand, but I was raised here. I was born in Somalia originally and have lived here for about 20-something years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. I have interesting. Well, I want to ask you, Wida, what's make you to choose psychology?
I think people are the most interesting creatures ever, and I think there's a lot of aspects that come under psychology, and I just think I'm so fascinated by the way that people think and how it's different, how it's similar, what affects it, what factors is included in all of that. So it's a very deep and meaningful topic for me, and I think it's really, really important. The most thing I'm passionate about at the moment is just well-being, which I see holistically, not just as a physical thing, but physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. So I'm really passionate about that, and I think you can help a lot because everything starts off in the mind, and so mind and body and behaviour is something that's really meaneful to me.
Oh, that's cool. And you, Kadra, why did you choose?
It's a bit different from Widad's reasons. So I actually,
I hope so.
so I actually I've always been into reading, writing. So I've always excelled at English and social studies and society and things like that have always been my thing. I read and write on the side as well. But coming from an immigrant family, writing and reading isn't really like a good thing to do, I guess. It doesn't make money. And my parents were worried about my future, so they pushed me to follow something more, I guess, practical. So I was average at chemistry, but very good at biology, and because it was so written, so I thought, okay, I'll do biomed. It's the closest thing I can get to med without doing med. Yeah. So I went to Vic, did biomed, and yeah, I actually really enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot about myself, made some lifetime friends. I don't regret it, but I do wish I had done more writing and reading on the side.
Do you think you would do that, go back in the future to do that, or is that?
I do actually write by myself anyway. So right now I'm working on a novel. I don't plan on publishing it, but I'm just trying to finish it now.
That's amazing. I want to read that.
One day, inshallah, maybe. But yeah, so I just write now.
What sort of genre is it? Is it like sci-fi fantasy?
No.
Definitely not.
Not quite. So it's about a character who mirrors very similarly to me. So I'm a Somali New Zealander who grows up in New Zealand, navigating identity, blah, blah, blah. But also living a very normal life. So she's not, trying to get married or anything like that. She's just trying to finish.
Shocker.
Yeah. She doesn't fall in love with a European boy, anything like that. It's just a girl similar to me, finishing uni, trying to live life, I guess. I'm just trying to introduce a very normal, like how very normal our lives are. I'm very similar to everyone else.
You should write a Netflix original. They could use the help.
Maybe that's next. Who knows?
It's very interesting that you mentioned the fact that your parents pushed you to something more practical. We were talking about that last week, where we kind of can't afford to take risks in following our passions, which is really sad, but it's kind of the reality of our situation.
Yeah, exactly. So, when my parents, I wasn't very happy about it, but I could understand why they said what they said. It's very, very difficult to make a living reading and writing. I don't know many authors off the top of my head right now from New Zealand, let alone the world. Yeah. So it's like you have to kind of put aside some things, and you can still read and write on the side. That's what my dad told me. And yeah.
What was your experience like, both of you, in uni? did you feel helped in any way, supported or disadvantaged because of your background and upbringing, or how was your experience like?
So I went to university, being the first in my family to go to uni.
Yeah.
So it was really, really scary, I would say.
Intimidating.
It was intimidating, yes. And at high school, I had quite a rough final year. And I was actually told by my teachers, or my dean rather, specifically, that she felt like I couldn't go to uni or I shouldn't go to uni. That really cut me, and it completely destroyed kind of my ambition to go. And I was like, this dean specifically called me to her office to say that? There must be a reason, you know? And then, so I went through a phase where I was like, maybe I should just do a course, maybe I should just work, I don't know, is uni for me? Because I didn't want to, you know, like sign up to something and then feel like I'm not able to finish it, or to feel like a failure, or to upset my parents in any way.
Yeah.
And then actually I just took it upon myself to sign up for scholarships, and I just didn't expect anything. I was like, if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, that's totally fine. And thankfully, one day before my graduation from high school, I got the email saying that they confirmed my scholarship to Victoria, which was interesting because I remember asking the high school to help me apply for a $3,000 grant.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that, and I was cut again. But then the scholarship was a fully funded scholarship, $10,000 a year. They were so surprised, and it was kind of like, do you see this?
Yeah, go show it to the
Look
dean.
at this. Someone believes in me, and it doesn't have to be you. So it wasn't the money. It was kind of the meaning behind, you know, if people don't see your value, that's not your problem. Like, there will always be other people that value you for you. And that's exactly who I want to be. I want to still be myself and still follow my passion and my dream. And that scholarship gave me that. So it was more about to do with following my passion, being able to be given the opportunity and to feel supported. And so that scholarship opened the window to university for me. And at university, I was kind of nervous, not gonna lie, submitting my first couple assignments. But then actually, once I started I adopted the mindset that I want to be at university to thrive and to better myself and to study because I believe in education, and so many people were not able to access education. And so when I was in class because I'm following my passion, I'm following something that I'm actually interested in. Naturally, you invest yourself in that, and it doesn't feel like studying, you just naturally want to do it. So thankfully, because I had that mindset, when I studied, it didn't feel like a chore or a task. It was just something that, you know, I was using to develop myself further, to give myself a good foot for the future, and to bring something to the table. And so I had a really good academic experience, but also through that I made a lot of really important relationships and networking, and through that I worked on my confidence, and also my identity was a lot more solid then. And I was getting into sort of self-development as well, and just working on being positive and, you know, adopting a mindset that enables growth. And I got really good at that. And in my final year, I was able to take up leadership positions at the university and to be, you know, president of activities for a year and a bit. And that experience completely changed everything as well. And I felt so active. And I used to come back home not feeling drained at all, even though I had just basically worked from, you know, 8 till 8 sometimes and only had like one meal throughout the day. But it just felt like I was making a change. And so that's when I was like, you know what, if I just follow my passion and feel like I'm bringing something to the table and I'm changing for the better, then I know then I'll be all sweet. So yeah, that's kind of how university changed everything.
That's such a positive way to look at everything, and I adore that.
I was actually a little bit luckier in high school. A lot of my teachers actually pushed me to go to uni. Like my English teachers and my history teachers were the most supportive, because I did very well in history and very well in English. So they pushed me to do writing like I wanted to do.
Really? That we went to the same college?
Yeah. So
we had, we had a few, we had a few good apples. Good apples.
For
sure. Yeah.
Very, very good teachers. I think I was just lucky because I know it's not everyone's experience. A lot of my friends had negative. But yeah, for me, my history teacher and my English teacher were very, very good, and they pushed me to do writing. But when I told them I was going to go in to do biomed, they were disappointed, but they were still very supportive. I didn't do any scholarships because I actually didn't know you could do scholarships outside of NZQA. I didn't know you could apply for them. I thought you had to do it through NZQA, and I did not want to do scholarship exams. So I was like, oh, you know what, I'll just take a loan. I'll pay it back, whatever. So I walked in without a scholarship. And my first year of uni was very, very interesting for me because I know I'm a very hard worker, but NZQA does not prepare you for uni at all.
No, wait.
No,
it's different
very different ball game.
For uni.
Nothing really prepares you for uni.
Socially, academically, nothing
yeah,
at all.
yeah, exactly. So going into my first year, it was like I was in another world. There was no like bells. That really threw me off.
Yeah,
You needed them bells.
Yeah,
Stop.
I needed
the structure.
There was no like, it's lunchtime, go eat.
Yeah.
It was, that's it. Like, go to your lectures, know what time your lectures are on, eat when you can.
It's good if you remember to eat.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, going in my first year was hell. But like, I did pick up a lot, much better habits. But I only became very, very social my second year. So my first year, all my friends did the exact same degree as me. They did the same classes as me, the same labs as me. But second year, I made a conscious effort to get to know more people.
Yeah.
So I made a lot more friends outside of biomed, and a lot of them did English. And I did other subjects. I picked up a paper in religious studies in my third year, and that was really cool. And I think uni taught me so much about myself and a lot about like the world and how
It really does help you
Yeah.
grow.
It's just your worldview changes.
yeah, and
what's
you always
meaningful
exactly
changes,
you always
yeah.
walk in thinking things are either black or white from high school, but uni it's like, oh no,
Yeah.
no, it's black, white, green, red, like it's all this other stuff.
And you can choose whatever colour you want.
And I really liked that in uni there was no like right or wrong, and assignments weren't like write about this one thing. It was just, what is your opinion on this? And there's no right and
There's
wrong.
a lot more
and
freedom in terms of
yeah,
that.
there's so much more freedom in your academics, and I really, really I loved uni. Even though I studied something I wasn't as passionate about, I learnt to love it because of the people I was around and
That's great.
all the stuff that I picked up. And yeah, I really, really liked my time at uni.
That's amazing.
What sort of community work did you do while you were at university?
So with the university, I was involved with the local masjid in Kilbirnie, also Islamic Women's Council New Zealand. I also so the people that I was involved with my scholarship were called Graduate Women New Zealand, and they elected me onto the committee in my final year, so I did some policy work for them as well, and started networking outside of that too. I also did a lot at uni with sort of various groups, but mainly Vic Muslims, so I was vice president for a year there, and I organised and planned out and carried out, managed all that 12 events during the year for about 200 students. That was really cool as well. And since then, I also did some work at Smart Start Business, which is a social enterprise for migrants and refugees. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I mainly did work within my local mosque, the Kilbirnie Mosque, and I stayed there most of the time. I do teach there every Sunday. I teach the younger kids, and I teach the alphabet, the Arabic alphabet. I did a bit of work here and there with Vic Muslims, but I wasn't part of the main committee. Yeah, I didn't do much. I did work though. I worked part-time at Pack and Save in a customer service role. That was really good because it meant I can apply for other jobs with the skills that you learn in customer service. But I kept mostly to myself throughout uni because biomed is a very demanding degree, and I didn't really have a lot of time outside of studying to do what I wanted. But in my third year, I did make a conscious effort to volunteer and work outside of uni as much as I could.
Yeah, and so like how did you find the different type of learnings that you made outside of uni versus the ones inside of uni?
Okay, I'll mention something that I always go back to, and that's like, I always got like questioned why, because I was doing a lot of hours for a university student and I was on scholarship, so I had to maintain that GPA, but they were just like, why would you, like, you're basically doing a full-time job but you're not getting paid, and they just wouldn't understand that. And so I always go back to something we refer to as like helper's high, which is like the idea that when, like, basically that humans are wired to want to give and they feel good and rewarded when they do give. So it's like, when you give something and help another person out, your brain reacts chemically in the same way as if you were induced with a mild morphine drug. So that's how I kind of describe it. You do get a boost and you feel it, and that's what keeps me going. So if I don't see that, then I feel like frustrated that I'm not kind of progressing. I'm not sharing anything, giving anything back. And I feel like when you work on yourself internally, when you know who you are, what you want, how to get to where you want to be, when you're full internally, you're able to give a lot more externally too. And that's something beautiful about just keeping like human, your basic human, nature is to want to give and to see people progress.
We always have conversations about that, how in the West, it's more individualistic behavior.
Yes.
And we've grown up with more community-based behavior where we just want to better our community. We share whatever we learn, whatever we have.
For the greater good.
Yeah, like why would you keep anything to yourself when you can share that with others and better
others? The way you
others?
see yourself is through others too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the human rights that often get overlooked is the right for social inclusion. And that's something that sounds like you've got a scientific explanation for, which is great.
It's not my theory.
I did learn a lot in uni and outside of uni. It's hard to separate it because it is it goes hand in hand. In uni, I agree, it was very much individualistic stuff. So it was how do you get an A? How do you pass your assignment? How do you build the right timetable to do what you want to do? Outside of uni, it was very much helping the community, giving them as much as you could.
And you need that balance.
You really do need that balance. And leaving uni, you need all those experiences. While I was in uni, or when I walked into uni, I find because I wasn't so involved in the community as much as I wanted, my mindset does change a lot when I was in uni versus when I was outside of uni. So in uni, it was very much individualistic. I wanted good grades. I'd go to the library. I was by myself, and to me that was good. I didn't really do a lot of group stuff. I didn't hang out with a whole bunch of friends. I had friends, but very, very individualistic. Whereas outside of uni, going to the mosque every Sunday to help teach 30-something kids with 5 teachers, and having time to spend with those teachers who were roughly my age, helping wherever I could at the mosque, helping out with the iftars and the dinners that they had. That was very much community-based, and you got a lot of, I agree with what we dad said, that you got a lot of satisfaction out of that, and you leave I really, really accomplished something today.
You honestly feel high. In a good way.
In a very good way. Versus when you went home from uni where you felt very tired and, I just want to sleep.
The naps.
Do
you think that's spiritual satisfaction?
Oh, very much. Spiritual.
But also psychologically. I mean,
can you separate the two?
I think you can. For me, when I was when I helped out at the mosque, I felt spiritually good because, Islamically we believe you build good deeds by doing good things. But I also felt very good during the iftars when I helped out in communities where there was a lot of non-Muslims who came over to help us out. We had the Jewish community at one of our iftars where they helped prepare it, and helping them prepare the iftar was really, really cool and really fun, even though they're a very different community to us. And I think there's a very different feeling associated with helping out people outside of a religious one and helping people inside a religious context. So yeah.
I also feel when you give back to the community, you're engaging more directly with your community.
Yes.
So it's very different to reading about it or seeing it on TV or something like that. So it's actually creating a more accurate worldview where you're directly engaging.
Yeah, instead of letting someone who doesn't really know much about your community involve themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys have both graduated, and you're both beautiful hijabi women.
Thank you.
Let us know if at any point did you feel like your hijab was holding you back or letting people have these kinds of prejudices around you that kind of made it harder for you to step into the workforce or even academic-wise?
Especially after the Christchurch.
Okay.
Oh, there's definitely a two-sided coin because sometimes I think being a hijabi is good because you stand out. When you go to an interview, they're more likely to remember your face.
For good reason?
For good, yeah, for both, I guess. There's there's a part of me that's like, oh, I'm very happy to be a hijabi. I'm very different. It's a good thing. They're going to remember my face, blah, blah, blah. Then on the opposite side, I'm like, what if they remember my face for a bad reason? What if they say, oh, the hijabi they walked in, we're not going to accept her application? And I think one thing that I learned the hard way about applying for jobs, not just after graduation, but even during graduation, is that the hijab can be a barrier, but sometimes it's a good barrier because if someone is going to not hire me because I wear the hijab, I don't want to work for them anyway.
They don't reflect your values.
Yeah, they don't
anyway,
reflect my values anyway, and it's a lot easier to work in an environment where your hijab is either seen as not a barrier or seen as something that adds value to you and is respected.
Because then you'll feel comfortable enough to share what it is that you have to offer.
Yeah, definitely. So there's good and bad, and I think although it's hard, there can be a lot more good than bad.
Yeah. What about you with that?
So I went to, just a little bit before then, so I went to a Catholic high school and I was the first person to wear hijab. So that was a big thing for me and the school. But thankfully it was like, there was a lot more benefits, that came out of it, and they were accepting, and that's exactly the kind of attitude that I expect, if we believe in freedom of expression for all, then we believe it for all, and everyone should have that right. When I went to university, there was a few things here and there, like indirectly, like people would think that you're a refugee, even though I'm not. People will think
I'd be so surprised when you speak English.
Exactly.
Oh my God, the look on their face.
Yeah, I was, told, are you an international student? Even though I've been here 20 years, I haven't really studied.
You've probably been here longer than them.
Exactly. So, there was like minor things, or like, you're so pretty for an Arab, you're so this for a Muslim, you're so that.
Why can't I be pretty, period?
It does suggest that there is a mental scale in which they place you on. So obviously there is some sort of scale, but I don't like that to get in the way. And even though it is, I kind of like understand where it's coming from, because of media and because of ignorance and because of all these things. So I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. So I don't want to have that in my radar, that my hijab is a barrier. No, it's not. And I don't want to tell myself that it's not, because that's actually going to harm me. It's not going to do anything to help me get to where I want to be.
People are free to feel how they feel, but we can control how we look at it ourselves and how we...
Exactly. So I always believe it's an enabler in the sense that I know who I am. I chose to be this, and I'm going to embrace it no matter what. And if you want to accept it, then you're welcome to. And if you don't want to, then we can agree to disagree. It's the same thing. You should never let your personal bias or attitudes affect your work or your relationships or anything like that. And that's something I expect, but I also give. So if we, again, believe in freedom of expression for all, based whether it's on age, ethnicity, race, gender, whatever it is, then if I expect people to accept my expression and it's this, then I have to accept everyone else as well.
Definitely, yeah.
So again, with the workplace, if I feel like a certain vibe that I'm not going to be welcomed, or it's, which I have in interviews, I was specifically asked questions just for me, if I would be open to supporting a certain group of people with a certain sexual orientation, if I was able to accommodate and support them. That's on the assumption, obviously, they had that as a religious person or as a Muslim,
that you're against it, or you're going to stand in their way.
Which I'm completely not. Your personal attitudes are not allowed to enter into the workplace or your professional relationship.
And we all know that, and we all expect that from everybody else.
Yeah, so there is a bias. I'm not saying everyone has one, but you can come into that.
It does exist.
But I don't like to see it, and I like to give people to challenge it, So I always see my hijab also as some sort of activism, whether it's feminist or whether it's whatever, you're enabling people to see a different way of life and the good that comes from that. So that's how I look at my hijab. Hijab, my crown.
Oh, I love that. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so like moving forward, what would you like to pursue, and what would you like to see happening and like improving in terms of like employment or in like different places?
What are your plans for the future?
Yeah, what are you...
My plans for the future.
Go into deep reflection right now.
This is getting reflective.
Maybe share your passion and the plans.
Yeah, my passion is really broad. Like, I'm a person that is based a lot on like intuition. So like wherever I feel I can bring the most to the table, accommodate most of people's needs, better people. I mean, my passion comes from helping people and kind of being used and applying my skill set. But I also want to be a person that speaks because I know what I'm talking about. If I don't know something, I will not, comment on it. So I want to work on continuing to grow and to learn until I die. Like life is a school, I'm going to use it and I'm going to keep learning. I don't want to have any ignorance or anything like that. I want to bring it upon myself to directly engage with the community, different types of people, different ethnicities, different cultures, different backgrounds, different workplaces, everything. Just want to get out there, learn, be part of everything, embrace everything. And honestly, like my passion does come from kind of like, I want to create a better quality of life and to increase people's like well-being and happiness. And again, with well-being, I see it as a holistic approach. So I want to work possibly in like intervention. Like I want to determine what makes someone resilient, what makes someone not resilient. How can we cater for that? How can we help that? Where does that come from? And how can we advance that? I don't believe that chucking money at a system that's clearly not working and that has no, data or evidence base to suggest that it is helping, and we just keep throwing money at it. I don't think that's a way to solve a problem. Yeah. Look at the root problem, look at the big picture, do some research, come up with intervention, and just really focus on well-being, mindset. Again, everything begins at the mind. So if we can create a generation that is accepting, that is open, that is built on following their passion and growth, then I think that's a starting point.
Yeah. What about you, Kadra?
I think Vida said everything I wanted to say. But I think similarly, I did study a very, very specific degree. So biomed is very much diagnostic work, lab work. But the broader sense of helping people is also cool. But for me, although I did do biomed, I don't actually want to work in a lab. Like for me, I've always, like Vida said, like I do like face-to-face. I do like working with people. So I like to implement a lot of the stuff I've learnt throughout uni, throughout life, throughout my writing, all of it. So one of my biggest, one thing I definitely want to achieve is touch people with my writing. So I definitely want to write stories that reflect people like me. And like I said, I like the idea of normalizing something very different to you. So in New Zealand, we're a minority, hijab is uncommon, but to show people that we
don't have to look at it as a negative thing.
Or look at it as another.
Yeah. So, storyteller.
Yeah.
Good job as a storyteller,
Yeah.
That's
So for me, storytelling is a huge passion of mine. Cool. I love using my words and I love writing. I love to read, all of that. So although I did do biomed and I do want to work in that field and improve my skills, it's one of my biggest things in life is like my writing and using that as a tool to reach more people.
Hope you get the best of both worlds.
I hope so. Really.
Both of you sound like philosophers as well, so
good.
Maybe you could be one of those.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. We've learned a lot. We loved everything that you had to share, and we wish you absolutely all the best in your future.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a privilege.
Thank you.
Romántica luna, el lucero que es lelo, de mirar en tu valle, la mujer que yo quiero. Y el jilguero que canta, calles que se levantan, carnaval en Juanchito, todo un pueblo que inspira. Es por eso que espero, que los días que lejos no dure mi ausencia, sabes bien que me muero. Todos los caminos conducen a ti. Si supieras la pena que un día sentí, cuando al frente de mí tus montañas no vi. Que todo, que todo, que todo, que todo, que todo el mundo te cante, que todo el mundo te mire, celoso estoy pa' que mire, no me voy más ni por miles. Que todo el mundo te cante, que todo el mundo te mire, celoso estoy pa' que mires, no me voy más ni por miles. Permite que me arrepienta, oh mi bella cenicienta, de rodillas mi presencia, si mi ausencia fue tu afrenta. Que todo el mundo te cante, que todo el mundo te mire, celoso estoy pa' que mires, no me voy más ni por miles. Que noches tan bonitas, si lo en tus callecitas, al fondo mi valle en risa, ay todito se divisa. Que todo el mundo te cante, que todo el mundo te mire, celoso estoy pa' que mires, no me voy más ni por miles. Un clásico en el Pascual, adornado de mujeres sin par, América y Cali a ganar, aquí no se puede empatar. Que todo el mundo te cante, que todo el mundo te mire.
So welcome back, guys. That was a great conversation we had with Kadro and Wadad. Yeah, some really interesting points were made, and I hope we can see them again. Our next topic is a talk about Waitangi Day. So for those who are listening, Waitangi Day has already happened, but we are yet to experience it. So we're all looking forward to it, and yeah, we'll just talk a bit about it. So I'm just going to give a brief history about it. It's going to be a bit of a biased history because I guess everyone's biased in their own way. So this is the main points that I kind of took away from that brief history. So in 1840, the Treaty of Waitangi was signed between the British and the Maori. Two different forms of the treaty was written and signed, and the Maori version and the British version. And so there's controversy between the two because the British version say that the Crown owns the land and the Maori are servants of the Crown, essentially. Whereas the Maori version say that the Crown has to answer to Maori at the end of the day, and the land is Maori. That's a bit of a rough bit, but anyway, the points. I believe that the reason why the British wanted the treaty signed is because the French were also here, and their missionary, especially in the missionary, mission. Especially in Christchurch, there was a large settlement, and I believe the British wanted to claim New Zealand as their own, and their resources were being depleted because they had to ship their troops and resources from the other side of the world. So a quicker way to get this done was to make an agreement with the Maori and make peace, essentially, which they did, and everything was hunky-dory. But the unfortunate thing is that the British felt like they were adhering to the treaty. However, the Maori had a very different point of view, and since the British wrote the treaty, according to international law, as I've looked up, and if there are two copies of the treaty signed, they both say different things, then the ultimate authority and truth goes to those who didn't write it. So, in the eyes of international law and the Maori, it's the Maori version we should be adhering to, not the British version. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a rough introduction. Yeah.
That's really interesting topic that we are talking today because it make a really interesting and important day in the history of New Zealand. So I would like to share a bit about my perspective, either if I am coming from a third culture, if I can say that, or I can say as a New Zealander now, that I see this treaty in both ways, as a good and bad. Because in the first stage, I will go through the right of the people of the land, because this land it was for the people who name they are Maori, they will exist. So and some other peoples who came from different countries, and they come in a way is illegal to invading the country and creating a treaty. Here I see there is something I would say not okay with this treaty. But in other way, I will see the treaty as a sign to stop killing, because it was a sign not. Maybe it was a wise time for a chief, Maori chiefs, to sign it to stop the killings, because the colonizations, they come with the weapons and they start killing, and there was no other options. Either the land they already will be taken from them, either they will be killed, or to sign something that at least to make them, friendly, and somehow to save the life of the other people in the areas. So. Because this is really related to me, I feel myself as one of the indigenous people of Mesopotamia. We have lost the land, and we have not signed any treaty. But maybe I will say the option, there was no treaty to be signed. There was no considerations for us to be part in anything. Even in 1920, when the address it to talk about a nation to be for my people in Assyrian, but they ignored that in League of Nations. They took out that subject, and they, just a big power, have divided the Middle East between themselves. That's how we become lost. Turn out we even lost the language and a lot of things. That's why I would say, even if it's negatively, maybe most of them see that the treaty, but I will stay as a sign of a good and having peace between a big power and the power of the colonizations, and then the power of the original people, this is I think was the best option to sign the treaty and have a little bit peace. And today, if we are in 21st century, this is how many years this is signed, Michael? This is 100 years, right? It's 100 something?
180.
180 years to be signed.
Years.
Yes, signed in 84, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we signed it even through the history of New Zealand, that this treaty have not been implemented because of two versions of Maori and English. Here we can discuss also about the importance of the language, especially when we are coming from different backgrounds, and when we are entering into for example, as a job, the importance of the language. It's important to understand culturally what's the meaning what's meaning this type of things, to not have something great to follow, not like a treaty. So I think most problem of the treaty was in the first and the second point of the treaty, right? So here we see the power of the language, what meaning this word in the English version and in the Maori version, which changed everything. And that's how I see it.
I don't know. First of all, I know this isn't my conversation to be had. This is something that obviously ultimately comes down to what the Maori population think. About what you were saying about how it can be a good thing because it kind of prevented future killings and massacres and whatnot. I don't know if I necessarily agree, because the Crown sold the Maori a lie. They gave them a different translation of what they wanted the treaty to be. The Maori didn't know what they would be giving up. They didn't know what they expected good. That isn't what they received. And even now, I don't think anything bad was prevented. If anything, they're still disenfranchised. They still are overrepresented in prisons. I don't know if it's a day that necessarily should be celebrated because of that. I think Pākehā still need to honor the Maori version of the treaty, and if that's not being honored, I don't see celebration in this day.
I totally agree with you. Definitely with the first part. Like, that's one of 2 points I'd like to make, is that the Treaty of Waitangi did not end the massacres. In fact, it sparked the New Zealand Wars in the 1880s, and then we got Parihaka, if you guys heard of that. There's in New Plymouth, a site where the British came and massacred women and children. And so the British, the Crown, should I say, the symbolic representation of UK, still has blood on her hands that she ignores. And that's a controversial statement, but there we are. I believe that.
I think like the bigger picture that I see here is how narratives can be manipulated by oppressors and made to seem like something that it's not. The fact that like the Maori the Maori written treaty was different to the English one. It was not an accident. It wasn't a translation kind of fault.
It wasn't an error. It was
purpose.
Obviously.
It was done purposely, and it was written overnight. Like it was written overnight, and it wasn't even like it wasn't.
It's just
they were not put enough
colonialism.
Yeah. So I think that's something that we can all see happening in all countries that have been like colonized. Is narratives being manipulated, and obviously, if it's the oppressor telling the story and telling history, obviously they're not going to tell it correctly. They're not going to tell it from an authentic perspective. So I think it's kind of like how we see Waitangi Day is very like ignorant. I think in this country, it's kind of ignoring. I think there's this kind of culture of just like recognizing that like Indigenous people are there, but they're almost like non-existent. They're just like they're in the corner.
They're like the black sheep of the family.
Exactly, and I think it should be normalized to talk about this. I think we should all, as New Zealanders, we should sit down and talk about Waitangi Day from an authentic perspective without kind of like shying away from it.
We should also have history told from the Indigenous perspective and from people who have ancestors who have experienced this and who know the true history. Yeah. We should have Te Reo Māori compulsory in school. There's a lot that this country should be doing.
Yeah, and I see, like, I look at it today and I think to myself, what good has come to New Zealand because of the Crown, and what bad do we have, you know? And I look at you know, central government type stuff, and I see that there's like we've got some good government stats when it comes to transparency and accountability, comparing with world things. But then I look locally and I see there's so much injustice still being done when it comes to inequality. According to with the Māoris having like high prison rates and low education rates and and finding it tough to get it out of the poverty trap. When I ask people about the Treaty of Waitangi and was it a good thing or not, like the majority of my European-born friends are like, yeah, it's great. Like it was a gift. They act as though it was a gift to the Māori, but in reality, the Māori were doing just fine. And they weren't destroying the environment, and they were living relatively peacefully amongst themselves, and they had their own system of governance that was good. I just think that colonizers have a huge ego that they want.
And like when we're talking about peace, you know, it was like signed, so there'd be peace at the cost of what? Like at the cost of like their culture, their language, their identity, their everything.
Their land.
So when we're talking about peace, we have to actually like recognize that it was at the cost of like all these things. So at the end of the day, was there actually peace?
And I would just want to make a comment maybe here about when I say the in one side I view it as a good treaty. Because the question will come, what will be the option for the Maori? I'm pretty sure they know that this treaty they will sign and they will not be implemented. And pretty sure they know that this treaty points will be changed by the colony because the power was in their hands. So they are coming as a colonizations. They are enforcing you in a way or another, you like it or may not like it. This is what it is. So what was their option if they are not signing this treaty? And also it's turned it bad because at the beginning was it bad. There was no meaning to sign a treaty because it's like someone who can sell your land. It's a know the people of the land, who are they? How you can sign a treaty. It was much better to Maori sign or Maori gave a rules explaining to the other part that this is our rules, this is our how you would leave, we will welcome you in our country. And I think they did so. The Maori, they welcomed the British at the beginning. As a good intention, they welcoming them. But later on, when they get power and they start, colonizing and taking over the country. So here I see, well, maybe the question is, what was the option if they didn't sign the treaty?
Yeah, I think we can't truly know because obviously those people don't exist and it happened hundreds of years ago, but we can still see the impact of that event and like today and how we do things. So I think the focus should be drawn to not exactly trying to figure out what could have they done, what could be done or not, but for the focus should be how we can handle it right now. And I think having a Waitangi Day kind of celebrating that event, what exactly are we celebrating? There needs to be an actual accountability, an actual real conversation about what exactly it is that we're actually like celebrating or talking about.
My views on the subject, on the question would be, where was the rest of the world at that time, and how far through colonization had Europe been? And I was talking with one friend saying that if they had lasted to World War One, the Maoris, because they weren't losing the battle, they were just seeing that there was, well, both sides were losing equally, So I would think that if my friend was telling me, saying that if the Maori held out until World War One or just before, then maybe independence, Maori could be, New Zealand could be independent to the Maori, or Aotearoa, should I say. It's just an interesting point of view rather than an accurate pseudo thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's really, and maybe the other questions will be saying, we see the effect that's followed up by this treaty. What should be done today? How we can celebrate it, or how we can, what exactly mean this day for New Zealanders?
I think where I see, like, especially in the government, is like, our government seems really kind of like easy and kind of flexible and kind of like, yeah, just doing things and like kind of doing the right things. But there's no real accountability because we don't exactly know what they're doing. We don't exactly know. There's no written constitution. There's no real accountability. And I think there just needs to be like, it needs to be normalized, the fact that like we're just sitting down talking about like Waitangi Day, talking about like what happened in history. These things should be like normalized and kind of like, not shy away from, and we shouldn't make the indigenous people look problematic for like addressing these kind of like topics.
Totally agree, and I will also, once Nergis, I think you mentioned it, told about history from indigenous people. So that's what we are seeing recently in New Zealand radio and other channels. I have heard they are trying to teach history in schools, history of Aotearoa. And this history will be, I think, good start to teach the history, and especially the history of the land that we will all understand. Once they start this step, I think will be the future generation much more open-minded, much more aware about these days and everything. And now we are talking about these subjects. We are not like talking to make a difference between what's happened the things that's happened at the end of 400 years ago, but now we are talking about how we should do things right, to not let those who are generations who's come growing up to not being abused or their rights going missed because of the history has been taken or the land's been taken from them. So it's a good start that the governments or as a whole to act to learn about the real history of this land and real culture of this land, because I'm pretty sure because they are very welcoming to share how we are now, especially we are sharing our cultures to the other peoples. So it's very necessary to learn the culture of this land, and from them we can build on that. We can go ahead.
Another thing that's like becoming common is the kind of like Maoris pushing for the language to be like spoken more, and I think that's like also like a right way to like go about it. Like their culture needs to have more dominance in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that the whole sort of nationalism kind of thing coming through. It's like if you can bring forth culture and language into your identity as a country, then I think there'll be a lot more positive development.
So, I mean, maybe another interesting question is why you see that indigenous people everywhere here in Australia or anywhere in the world, they are so fighting, especially for the language, or fighting about their identity.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about language, because like language is more than just like a tool to you just communicate with. It's about like it also has like a lot of influence in terms of like how things are done and how things are communicated. I think by making a language dominant, there's also other dominants that come with it as well.
I think it's also acknowledging that these people exist and their history exists and is valid and is important. And the reason why people are still fighting for it is because they're also fighting for their right to be included in these spaces, the spaces that they've been excluded from for hundreds of years and some maybe even thousands. And which shouldn't be. It was their land to begin with. They were colonized, and these people still refuse to acknowledge that these people exist.
That's right. Totally agree.
Yeah, and language, I think, is a symbol of people's culture. Yeah, I think that's important. I also don't think that... I think that a lot of Indigenous people... It's not that they think it's their land. It's just that it's not anyone's land. The fact that like you can put... Like with the Māori, it's not that it's their, like I own this little bit of land and it's mine. It's more that it's like the gods are the land, like naturist sort of religions, folk religions. So for people to say that's me, that's mine, that's kind of a desecration on the Māori taonga, which is their treasure, what they treasure. Yeah. So it's like a different perception of mind. That's clashing.
My perspective on when I am saying then the word of indigenous people, here I mean the people who first came to this land. So I agree that this land is not belonging to anyone.
Then you'd be talking about the Moriori's. And they're mostly dead.
So this is here. From there you can start how the culture have been created in the land. Because when the people were moving through, when the different sources were come from Middle East or Africa, the first people civilizations come there, when they move it through years and years and 1,000 years, then each place you will have some group of people who've been identified by some names, some cultures. That's how they claim that this is our original names. We have indigenous people in Kazakhstan, we have in China, in other places. So all I think is believed is all came from one dynasty, one source, but all when they move with the first source, there's this action of immigration. When I look for my family, when I will be indigenous for my next 100 years in Aotearoa, in my race and my people family who come, because they also my first grandfather who was this one who moved to this land. So I think the same thing. While even in Middle East, if you see that there is indigenous people who moved from the south of Iraq, then to the north, and then from there they started to moving to other places. But when every people went to other places, everyone have named themselves by different name, and then they started to become first generation of that land. That's how we can call it. This is the indigenous of the land. But I totally agree that this land is belong to everyone. It's belong to the Creator.
I don't know. I just think it's always the indigenous people who are most vulnerable, who are first targeted and marginalized and pushed into poverty and violence. And as Beth says, there's no accountability for all that happened. And there needs to be more done to help these people, to give them... There needs to be more done to help these people, to have policies implemented to lift people out of poverty, to get them out of prisons when they shouldn't be, to provide them with better education and welcome them to spaces that they belong.
Yeah, I totally agree. And We have not too much left, maybe the last 2 minutes. What do you think, guys, about treaty?
I just think really quickly that we need to revise our constitution and actually have a proper written one. There is a report called the Matiki Mai Aotearoa, and it's a sort of a whole bunch of Māori groups got together and made this report about a constitutional reform that helps to make a better New Zealand for everyone. I just want to put that out there so that it's on people's radar.
Yeah,
That's right,
I think if you're gonna have like Waitangi Day, at least do more to kind of recognize like the indigenous people, like the culture, history, rather than just giving a holiday and God knows what we do with the day.
Like tokenism. It's almost you've got your holiday now. You're part of us, but just take it.
That's the point.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be more done.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. My final take is listen to Indigenous peoples, stand with them, provide them with the solidarity that they need, and yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I will say also just act more and
don't believe the biased history.
Yeah, and just love everyone.
Yeah, share aroha, share around, and we are in 21st century, let's be truth and speaking truth to each other. Listen to the people. No fake news. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And I think we are coming to the end of the show.
Yeah,
right?
It was great. It was great to be here today. See you all next week.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
The day when you would get up out of here. So, long-time friends, we remain the same until you return. One day, I will say, I never fade away on you, my friend. I'm still thinking when we used to chill and reason till the morning sun. So we talk of places never seen before. Who would think you'd be the one to go out there over mountains, oceans, highways, byways? Still you're thinking I'm there with you, tag team us two. Straight through, that's why I stay strong to you. So why? No way, no how. I never fade away.
That program was brought to you by Wellington Access Radio. Get your voice heard.
Thanks, New Zealand On Air, for supporting accessmedia.nz.